Hello friends, it's time again for me to try my hand at a black canvas, and I'm excited to have you join me. Today's painting is titled Black River, and it features a dark sky at sunset over a lazy little river lined with thousands of bright colored leaves. There's even a happy little path to explore. Before we get going, if you could please click subscribe, it would really mean a lot to me, and help this little channel to grow. I've got the canvas prepped, and the paints are ready, so let's get painting. All right, we're going to get right into it now with the colors we're using. Titanium white, Prussian blue, sap green, dark sienna, Van Dyke brown, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, and permanent red. Now the dark sienna I'm using there, I'm using that instead of burnt umber, which is what Bob actually used in the painting. Finding it hard to find burnt umber in the Bob Ross landscape oils, so I use this instead. You can see I've got my fan brush there, and I've loaded that up really well with titanium white, just kind of squiggling that around up in the sky, putting in some clouds. And as you can see, the canvas is a little different than just your standard white canvas this week. We started with a black canvas, which I made by taking some black gesso and painting that on just a normal standard canvas, and then you let that dry completely. And then, as you can see from the blue and red on there, I added some liquid red, which was alizarin crimson mixed with some linseed oil, and some liquid blue, which was Prussian blue that I used there. And as we do this painting, the paints that we add on top of those colors are going to pick up some of that, and that kind of brings some cohesion to the painting, and then also just creates a really nice sunset effect. You can see I've got my dry 2-inch brush there now, just going in and kind of blending in those clouds. And I'm using the corner of the brush now to really kind of just swirl those, fluff them up. Always moving. It's important to keep the brush moving when you're doing this. It's also important not to use too much white and to maintain some of those dark areas. If you just have all white, it creates just too uniform looking. It doesn't create the dynamic kind of effect you get here. Just adding some more in there. Not overpowering the dark areas, but filling them in a little bit. Just blending back and forth. Cleaning off that 2-inch brush now. My bucket of paint thinner there. Shaking it off in the trash and beating the devil out. I've got my 1-inch brush now. I'm getting some alizarin crimson and some Van Dyke brown. Just kind of mixing those together on the brush. And it was kind of hard to see what Bob was doing because of the black canvas, but they were getting better at filming the show, and this was definitely an easier one than some of the previous black canvases have been. I'm just adding some shadow in here for a tree line there off in the distance. And as I'm doing this, I'm trying to think about the individual shape of the trees that I'm adding, and not just adding in a big blob. There's more intention to it. Just kind of working up towards the corner there, kind of causing this tree to curve around towards us. You probably guessed from the name of this that it is a river. Filling it in some more, but also not trying to kill all those colors in the background, still letting some of that come through. And now I'm getting some cadmium yellow there on my 2-inch brush. Just a little bit, and then going in real gently. And we're adding some reflections now into the water for the river. Trying to give it with an angle there to give the bank more of a, shape to it, not just straight across. And it's hard to get your hand to pull straight down the way you need to get the reflections to work. But it's, critical for this river as the bank is curving towards us there. Just adding a little bit more of that yellow right directly underneath where the sun would be there. Just trying to pull straight down there. Real gently. Pulling through there, adding that ripple effect. Making it look really watery. This camera angle here is actually a different camera. I'm using a DJI Osmo Pocket 3 that I got, and it really turns out pretty good as far as the definition and everything. I don't know that I've got all the settings quite figured out yet, but I'm pretty happy with it for the most part. Got to figure out some of the autofocus and brightness and stuff. Got my fan brush back out there. I've got some of the dark sienna and the Van Dyke brown on there, and now I'm getting just a little bit of yellow on one side of that brush, and we're putting in some tree trunks. And by picking up a little bit of that yellow, it adds kind of an automatic highlight on the side of the trunk. You saw me flip it around there, just trying to keep that highlight side facing towards our light source, which is the setting sun there off behind the trees. Yeah, you can really see the effect there. One technical complaint I have about this episode, you can really see that glare off of the paint from this angle and even from the other angle to some extent. I tried a new location for some of my lighting, and I am not happy with how that turned out. Yeah, you can see it in the foreground on the painting there really bad, and then from the other angle it's kind of off to the top left of the painting. Got my 1-inch brush again there with some liquid white, picking up some cad yellow, just a little bit of permanent red there. Get a really nice bright color. Coming in to add some highlight foliage on the trees there. Trying to keep it pretty light. Leave space in between them, in between all the leaves. You can see the glare on the left side there. Trying to use the shape of the brush to my advantage to kind of create more of a branch look to it. And just mixing it around, picking up some different colors, just trying to get different natural tones in there so it doesn't all look like one big monotone blob. And just mixing those colors around some and getting a little bit more liquid white so that these highlight colors will stick better on top of the darker colors behind them. Yeah, moving the brush around, just going for some more variety and shape. Yeah, that one's real nice there. And as you do this, as you add them, the paint color is changing on your brush as you go, as it's picking up and interacting with some of those paints that are already on the canvas, especially that liquid crimson color, which the way I make those liquid colors is I just mix, it's like about 2/3 of the paint color and then 1/3 of linseed oil, and I mix that up. Sometimes I add some more linseed oil. Sometimes I don't add quite as much. It just depends. I guess kind of how I'm feeling. So much of painting is just done by feel, and that's something I've learned a lot by doing these paintings. I've just got some Van Dyke brown there on the brush, adding in some bank there for our river. And on this painting especially, but a lot of Bob's paintings, you kind of add a big area of water in, and then you go back in and add the banks and everything, the foliage, the different land masses that kind of hem in the water then and give it its boundaries. I've kind of got a highlight color there, just going in real gentle over the top that soil. And I'm pretty happy with how that bank turned out. Overall, it's one of my more favorite parts of the painting. Which, spoiler alert, I'm happy with how this one turned out. It's definitely my best dark canvas so far. They can be a challenge because just the texture of the paint you're working with is different than it is. The way the canvas reacts to the brushes is different. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. And you can see I'm kind of cutting in the water line there, just trying to keep it organic and move it along. Using different color this time than usual. Usually we used kind of a liquid white, and this time you can see we've got kind of a mix of the dark sienna and cadmium yellow there. Now back with my fan brush. I've got some sap green to kind of dull down some of those yellow tones there. We're going to go in and add some kind of grass, underbrush stuff underneath our trees and along the bank there. This painting really didn't have as much as some others, both in the paint department and in the tool department. I mean, you can see I don't have either phthalo color there. I don't have Indian yellow. I think those I think those are the main ones I'm missing. And then from a tool standpoint, you've got the knife there, obviously, but also a 2-inch brush, 1-inch brush, and a fan brush. I always keep backup standing by, and I was glad I did on this one because there's a point where I don't know if Bob cleaned off the brush or if he's just braver than I am, but I felt like using a clean, dry brush was definitely the way to go. Let's see if I can remember when that was when we get there. But I'm just putting in some land now, really kind of hemming in that water and keeping it from pouring out of the front of the painting all over the floor. And that's actually a harder technique than I would have guessed, and it's one that I kind of struggle with. From a time standpoint, I was definitely falling behind Bob here, and kind of struggling to catch up. I had it going at 75% speed, so it was slower than Bob does, but I think I need to go to 50% if I really want to be able to keep up and also focus on some of the details while I'm going. See, I'm just using the very corner of the brush to kind of get that up there and trying to mix it in really good. Some of the liquid white didn't mix in quite as well there, and you can kind of see that up there. Yeah, you can see that on there. In the end I covered up pretty well though, so it doesn't look bad. But just you got to be on the lookout for that when you're mixing colors with liquid white. If you don't mix them well enough, you could end up just putting white splotches on your painting, which, depending on what it is you're doing, might be, going to ruin the effect. Just real light there. Trying to keep that part of the woods kind of deep and dark and preserve the dark areas there. Back to our fan brush again there. Just going to put in a bunch of grassy stuff here kind of in the front. And going in to get some more green to kind of dull it down some more because that first bit was just a little too yellow. And here I'll mention another one of my kind of production complaints for this episode. Since it's been a while since I did the last episode, I kind of forgot some of my painting etiquette. And I definitely was blocking the camera view from behind, both with my hand, but then also with my head and shoulder and stuff, really getting in and focusing on the canvas, but it doesn't make for good cinematography. So my apologies for having to kind of lean on this angle a little bit more. One thing I am happy with the production on this one is the zooms. It seemed like they're working out really well. I feel like it does a lot better job of highlighting what's going on, and especially if I'm going to have a little bit better camera quality from this angle, anyways. Once I get the hang of it, that works fine to zoom in some without really damaging the quality of the picture. I don't know. When it comes to some of the production stuff, that's definitely not my forte. Camera settings and lighting and all that. Yeah, I'm doing my best though. I thought I was going to do something with the 2-inch brush there, but I guess I'm doing something. Oh yeah, putting in some tree trunks here. You can see I'm trying to keep the highlight now on the right side, facing towards that sunset. Just being real gentle, trying to just put in the hint of some of those. Bringing some of those colors out. Just trying to get the very tips of those leaves. Leave it pretty dark on that little peninsula there, since it's getting lit pretty much entirely from behind. Wouldn't be too, don't want it to be too bright. And now I've got my knife back out. Going to put in a little bit of riverbank there. Give a spot for all the little critters to come down and get a drink of water. And add just a little bit more highlight. And yeah, like I was saying, I'm really happy with the riverbanks on this one. I feel like they work well with the river. I feel like it all looks really well together as a whole. And I'm just trying to add some reflections now of the leaves above. Just a little bit down there. Bob emphasizes how easy this technique is for anyone to learn, and I would agree for the most part. It's definitely, I'm still very much a beginner, and I feel like I've come a long way already. I still have a long way to go, but as far as the basics go, it is fairly easy to get the hang of. You just have to be willing to give it a shot. Bob reminds us to follow the lay of the land whenever we're adding those kind of grassy areas. You can really screw up the perspectives on your painting if you're not thinking about it when you're putting those in. Now just mixing a few colors together to come in, mostly the yellow and umber there. Trying to cut in a little bit of a water line. Going for something a little duller than it was over on the other side of the river, back in the background there. Cleaning that off really good. Now going in with that knife, just using the corner of it to scratch in some different sticks and twigs and branches and trunks and grass and reeds and briars and anything else you can think of like that. Depending on where it is that you're putting it in the painting, like right now I'm putting in some pretty substantial branches and sticks, but up in the front when you're putting them in, they're more like twigs sometimes, or just little things, little weeds sticking up off the ground. But it's important to add this stuff. It really adds a lot of detail that your eye picks up on, even if you don't really notice that it's there. And if you don't have that going on, then the forest looks empty. See, just following the lay of the land there. And you can kind of see I'm going pretty fast here. Like I said, I was falling behind Bob some and working to catch up. Just kind of trying to put in a little path here. And a lot like the river, we kind of create a bigger area of open ground, and then we're going to go in and kind of define the actual path with the foliage. And we'll see how good of a job I do here, or not. And it's important, even with this grass, to have a good variety of color down in there, and to think about, just how clumps of things grow on the ground, the way these plants spread out. Make sure to leave plenty of space. Well, maybe not plenty of space, but make sure to leave some space in between the plants too, so that you can see the ground. Now just adding in some little shrubs along the riverbank here. Since these are closer to us, I'm really trying to focus on the detail. For the audio of this episode, I just used the microphones that were on the camera here, this camera angle, the DJI. It comes with a wireless lapel microphone. I haven't really experimented a lot with that, but I feel like there might be some potential to use that to get a little bit better audio from these paintings here. Just trying to make the trail ground look a little different from the surrounding ground. Here I am just trying to kind of define where the edge of that path is, and it's important when you're doing this to kind of, put a couple little bits of grass here and there elsewhere in the painting. It helps pull things together a lot better that way. You don't want it to all be the same color, but you definitely want there to be some kind of pattern to it, if you want to call it that. Yeah, it's really hard to see there from the glare. Apologies again for that. But just adding some more grass in there up the hill. And pretty much have the trail shape defined there, and you can see it's just, I don't know, it's almost unnaturally straight going from the viewer off in the distance there, and it's the same width the whole way, so the depth perception on it is just all wrong, and I don't love that trail. It's my least favorite part of the painting, which is fortunate because it's pretty prominent, but it could be a lot worse. When I look back on the first dark canvas painting I did, it just looked like absolute garbage compared to this one. Really, pretty much garbage compared to any of my other paintings, but I'm pretty happy with this one. Trying to add some bushes there that kind of hide the end of the trail, so it just kind of fades off into the forest there. The trail to look pretty overgrown, not a lot of people coming out this way. Just mixing some more colors there on the brush. And that brings us to our Bobism for this episode. This Bobism for this one is actually more of a Billism this time, referring to Bill Alexander, who Bob learned his technique from. But Bob says, don't mix the highlight colors dead. Mix them marbledy, as Bill calls it. And so I tried to remember that word, marbledy, as I was doing some of these highlight colors and mixing them on the brush. It does create a lot better effect when you have all the minute differences in paint colors on, from one bristle to another. It just creates more lifelike, less monotone looking foliage. Now with the knife, I'm just kind of adding a big old rock in there, which from a technique standpoint is more of a tiny little mountain. Just put in our dark color there now, kind of mixing up, keeping it marbledy, of course, our highlight color to go over the top of it. Yeah, try not to mix it dead. You can see I'm trying to use the small edge of the knife there, since it's such a small little rock. The big edge is just too much. Yeah, see, I'm like almost afraid to touch it. But you got to use some real finesse with these paintings sometimes. Bob mentions that, when we work on these at home, we can spend as much time as we want on them, and that we can add details after the paint's dry. And that doesn't actually fit with with what we're doing here on Becoming Bob. But that doesn't mean that if you're trying this kind of stuff at home that you can't take as long as you need or add as many details as you want. One example Bob gave was, kind of going back in and scraping off a little bit of an area to paint in a little deer or something. And that is just terrifying to me to try think of painting a deer in a painting at this point. It's going to be a while before I'd be comfortable to go back in and do that. But like I said, that doesn't fit with Becoming Bob. My goal is to paint along with Bob as he does his painting on the show, and then it's done. Unless there's some extraneous circumstances, there's no going in afterwards to add or change anything. That's not the purpose of this project. I'm just trying to add a little bit of bank showing through there to give it just a little bit more, realism. Just a little something kind of poking out into the river a little bit there. Like a stick or part of a log or something that got jammed there during a flood, a long time in the past. Just sticking out into the river. And it's kind of hard to see what's going on here. Just putting just a little bit of grass on there. Oh, you can see I've got my script liner brush out there, which means it's time to put my signature on there. Load it up with some linseed oil and dragging it through the permanent red there. I'm just going to put that right down in the corner. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun painting this black canvas. I hope you've enjoyed it too. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It really does give me a lot of feedback, and I really appreciate it. So thanks again for watching, folks. Have a great day.